This is Georgia Focus, a public affairs presentation of this radio station and the Georgia News Network. For the next 30 minutes, we'll feature a discussion about an issue of importance and relevance to you and your neighbors across Georgia.
Welcome to Georgia Focus. I'm John Clark on the Georgia News Network. Shepherd Center, located in Atlanta, is a private, not-for-profit hospital specializing in medical treatment, research, and rehabilitation for people with spinal cord injury, brain injury, and other neuromuscular conditions. Founded in 1975, it is ranked by U.S. News & World Report among the top 10 rehabilitation hospitals in the nation. Today, I am at the Shepherd Center, where I'm talking with Dr. Edelle Field-Fote. She is Director of Spinal Cord Injury Research here at Shepherd. Sarah Batts, who's Executive Director for the Shepherd Center Foundation, and Cathy McLendon. She is a physical therapist who is retiring in just a few days and will then undertake a hike on the Appalachian Trail to raise funds for spinal cord injury research. Her husband, Rand Herron, is a quadriplegic who has been paralyzed from the mid-chest down for 40 years. And ladies, it is great to be here at the Shepherd Center for my first visit here. Cathy, I want to start out. You're about to retire, literally in a few days, and then you're going to take on another job of hiking the Appalachian Trail. How did it all come about?
Well, you're right, John. I am sure going to take on this trail. I've been thinking about doing this since my 20s, and I'll be 62 soon. And I thought, what better way to do this and donate money to the Shepherd Center for Spinal Cord Injury Research in honor of my husband, Rand Herron, who, like you said, has been paralyzed 40 years. And this journey will take 6 months. It is 2,200 miles from Georgia to Maine, and we are so excited to give this money to such a worthwhile organization. We have already raised $5,306 in a month. It all goes to the Shepherd Center for Spinal Cord Injury Research.
Go back 40 years and talk about the story of you and Rand, how you met, and bring us up to date on that.
Rand was injured when he was 17 years old. That was in 1977. And I was completing my degree in biology, thought I wanted to be a physical therapist, so I wanted to have some experience in physical therapy. Shepherd had not even been thought about back then, and there were only 3 places to rehab spinal cord injured patients in the United States, and one was the Roosevelt Warm Springs Rehabilitation Center. Rand was flown there from Florida, and I went there to do my internship, and that's how we met. And then fast forward, we're here 40 years later. I'm about to retire as a physical therapist, and Rand is the reason I am a physical therapist. Right. I give him the credit for that.
Yeah, and you're about to retire from Northeast Georgia?
Northeast Georgia Medical Center in Gainesville.
Right.
And I will start this trek on April 1st. I'll retire March 30th, and I will start April 1st.
Wow, can't you? He's going right at it. Now, you were here at Shepherd, too. You mentioned you were one of the first physical therapists here at Shepherd.
I was. I was one of the first 4 physical therapists here in this building in 1982. And I have quite an affinity for Shepherd and the work that is done here, particularly the research.
Talk about your preparation for the trail. You have a big pack is sitting over here, and
yes.
You're very adept at carrying it around, and you're doing a great job with that. I guess you have to practice a lot, but talk about your preparation.
Yes, this preparation has been ongoing for about 2 years. I get up on the Appalachian Trail and hike as often as I can. I've been gathering this equipment together for 2 years. It's very expensive to do this, so you can't just think one day you're going to do it and get out a month later and go for it. So I have been preparing, I have been hiking, I've been gathering the equipment and getting my mind wrapped around this journey that will take 6 months.
It's as much mental as physical, I would think.
It really is. Yeah. When you're trekking 2,200 miles up and down mountains, and it's raining, sometimes you want to quit. But knowing that this is going to such a worthwhile organization will keep me going. It will keep one foot in front of the other.
Your equipment, you have to game plan for everything and anything, like weather and things like that on the trail. What do you have in your pack, and how have you gathered things as you and learn what you need as you go?
A lot of it is trial and error, you do a lot of research on the internet. You go to the big stores like REI and you ask a lot of questions. You have to consider weight with everything. So in my pack, I have my tent, which is a 2-person tent, sleeping bag, and that sleeping bag has to keep me warm when it is 15 to 20 degrees outside.
It'll get that cold.
It can. Yeah. There's a sleeping bag liner. There's your food. You carry about 5 to 6 days worth of food, and it's about a pound a day, a pound of food a day. And then you go into town to resupply every 5 to 6 days. You hitchhike or you get a shuttle into town. All of your first aid supplies are in there. Anything you might need for your feet to make this journey. Clothes, you have to have your clothes, and your winter clothes do weigh a little bit more. So I have packed 13 boxes full of resupply items, and they will be mailed at various sites along the way, hostels along the way, and I will send back my winter clothes when I can get my summer clothes, and so that will lighten the pack up quite a bit. Let's see, what else do I have? First aid, clothes, food.
What about water?
Water, yes,
you have
water.
To have a lot of water.
Filters, you have to filter your water. You cannot drink from springs anymore. When I start out, I'll carry 2 smart water bottles full of water. When it becomes summer, I'll have a bladder, and I'll have an inline water filter system with that bladder that I'll carry on my back.
When you stop along the way, when you mail these places, and you're going to stop and resupply, will you spend the night at a location there, or will you still stay in a tent every night?
I'll stay in a hostel. I'll take a bed whenever I can get one.
Yeah. Are you going alone?
No, thank goodness I have a wonderful female hiking partner. She did a little over 1,000 miles last year on the trail and had to get off for family reasons. And her trail name is Second Chance. She wants to try again. My trail name is Helper, and that was given to me by a very famous thru hiker. And he is what's called a triple crowner. He's done the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Coast Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. So I told him a little bit about myself, and he said, this is the perfect name for you, when he autographed his book.
What's your route? I know it goes all the way to Maine. Where will you talk about where you're starting, where you're finished, what the plan is there?
We're going to start in Damascus, Virginia, and that is where the trail starts, in Virginia. Most of the 1/3 of the trail, believe it or not, is the state of Virginia. It'll take a month to get through Virginia. Then we're going to go all the way to Katahdin, Maine, and take a flight back, get back on the trail in Damascus, and hike home to Springer Mountain, Georgia.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, those last 13 miles that I'm going to hike to Amicalola Falls State Park are going to be the most glorious miles, because Rand can still drive short distances in his wheelchair van, and he'll be there waiting for me.
Yeah. How many miles a day do you do? Do you have it calculated like that?
I have it all calculated, and you start out about 8 miles a day, because one of the reasons people get off the trail quickly is because they overdo.
Yeah.
So you build up your mileage, and you'll get up to from 8 to 10 to 12, and then when you really get your trail legs, you'll go 15 to 18 miles a day, except when you get to New Hampshire.
Yeah. Wow.
No way can you do those miles in New Hampshire in the White Mountains.
Wow. You're going to raise money for Spinal Cord Research here at Shepherd Center.
Yes. The site is crowdrise.org, CROWDRISE, and that is Shepherd's site for raising this money. And in the search button, you put RANDS, RANDS, walk on the AT. And you have to put spaces in between, or it will not come up. And then it's about the 3rd item that pops up. You scroll down, and there it is. And that's how you contribute to this wonderful, wonderful organization.
You have a goal?
The goal is $25,000.
Okay.
We've already raised $5,306 in about a month. And it's for their discretion to use however they want to.
Today I'm at the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, and we are talking with Cathy McLendon, who is going to be hiking the Appalachian Trail. and she is doing it to raise funds for spinal cord research. And her husband, Rand, is a quadriplegic. He's been paralyzed from the mid-chest down for 40 years, and he is part of the reason that she's doing this as well. We also have some other guests with us today. Sarah Batts, she's Executive Director of the Shepherd Center Foundation, and Dr. Edelle Field-Fote. She is Director of Spinal Cord Research here at Shepherd. Dr. Fote, I want to talk about what you do here at Shepherd. What conditions do you treat here?
Shepherd Center specializes in the treatment of individuals with spinal cord injury and acquired brain injury. We also have a very active outpatient program for multiple sclerosis and for pain as well.
What progress is being made as far as spinal cord injuries or any of the conditions that you treat, but most in particular spinal cord injuries? Are you seeing some progress being made?
So I'm glad that you asked that, because one of the major things that I think is important to think about is that despite all the hype that things like stem cells and technology gets, if you actually look at the scientific literature, the literature indicates that the best thing that we have to make the most meaningful changes in function for people with spinal cord injury is actual physical therapeutic interventions and rehabilitation. And so that's what we focus on in my lab. And like Cathy, I actually started my professional career as a physical therapist. I did my scientific work, my PhD, in an animal model of spinal cord injury, a turtle, as a matter of fact. I work with turtles with spinal cord injury, and then applied that knowledge to individuals with spinal cord injury, and I've been doing that now for 20 years.
Who comes to the Shepherd Center? Well, who are your patients typically? I know there is no such thing probably as typical, but who do you see here?
Yeah, so we focus, the work of the lab really focuses on improving function, people who have some walking function, or for our hand studies, people who have some hand function. And our studies are directed at trying to find a way to capitalize on what we know about the way the nervous system repairs itself and how rehabilitation approaches can contribute to that repair. So people both with paraplegia and with tetraplegia. And in both of those groups, we are also very interested in a phenomenon called spasticity, which a lot of people don't think about. If you don't know someone who has spinal cord injury or brain injury or a stroke, you don't really think about spasticity, but it's one of those things that really has a negative impact on people and their quality of life, and so that's another area of focus that we have in the lab.
Go into that in more detail, spasticity.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So spasticity is actually a disorder that happens after there's been damage to the central nervous system, where people have involuntary muscle activity. It can be so strong that it can throw someone out of a chair. We had an individual here who was a young man who was injured, and he had relatively good arm function, and he could have used a manual wheelchair and pushed himself, but because his spasticity was so bad, it would throw him out of the chair, and he had to be in a manual chair, which is much more cumbersome and more difficult to get around in, but he had to be in that heavier chair because of the spasticity. And it also is associated with stiffness, which just impacts people, just even the ability to turn over in bed, for example, because it just makes you so stiff.
So what progress are you seeing in that? What are is there any medications or anything that can be used for that?
Yes, so as a matter of fact, we just published a study in the journal Spinal Cord, which showed that of people who responded that they do have spasticity and who take medication for it, 78% of them said that they did not find the medication effective. And our approaches are really trying to identify things that people can do on their own, physical therapeutic interventions like stimulation and vibration and exercise that have been shown to be at least effective as medications.
Right. How long does somebody typically stay here at Shepherd?
It really depends. In terms of spinal cord injury, the inpatient stay, if someone has paraplegia and they have good use of their arms, their stay is likely to be shorter than someone who has tetraplegia and has impaired use of their arms as well. So it can vary from a few weeks to a month or more, depending on how severe their injury is.
Do they come to you from hospitals where maybe they've been injured in an accident or something, and then once they're out of immediate danger, they come to you for rehab? Is that how it works?
That's right, yes.
And they come from all over, I would imagine.
They come from all over. We primarily recruit from Georgia and the 5 surrounding states, but we get people. I was actually giving a talk in Saudi Arabia.
Really?
And a man came up and asked me, where would you recommend that I go? And I said, disclaimer, I'm from Shepherd Center. And he said, well, I'm glad you recommended that, because that's where we had planned to go.
It has to be gratifying. Cathy, I know you speak to this too as a physical therapist, that someone comes in and you see progress and they leave you, I guess, in so much better shape than they came, right?
Yes, that's absolutely true. And one of the things that I get calls from oftentimes from parents who's had a child or a teenager or young adult who's been injured. And one of the things I make sure to impress upon them is that even though we don't yet have a cure for spinal cord injury, it's possible to have a wonderful and fulfilling life with spinal cord injury. And Cathy can tell you with her experience with RAND that, there's so much that you can do even with spinal cord injury.
Cathy, speak to that, both as Rand being your husband and as you being a professional in physical therapy.
Spasticity is one of the horrors of Rand's life. His legs jackknife involuntarily. And I've seen patients have more function than they thought they could ever have with the proper therapy and with the research that Eddie is talking about. Rand, for instance, is a phenomenal artist. His fingers do not function, but he does digital art on his iPad. So technology has just opened the world to people with disabilities, particularly spinal cord injury and brain injury.
You do a lot of clinical trials here at the Shepherd Center. Dr. Fote, talk about some of the clinical trials that you have and how you think that can help in the battle, if you will, against spinal cord injury.
Yes, so the clinical trials that we focus on in my laboratory are really targeting physical therapeutic interventions that could be combined with rehabilitation. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of technology out there that is very, very expensive. Very few people can access. And one thing we know about the nervous system is that unless you have the opportunity to expose the nervous system over and over again to some activity, just a one-shot deal with a specific type of brain stimulation or with other types of interventions is probably not going to make a meaningful difference to function. So it has to be something that individuals can get routinely as part of therapy or perhaps even do in their home. So the studies that we have funded now are really trying to capitalize on the types of technologies that could theoretically be used in a clinical setting. So things like non-invasive brain stimulation, things like spinal cord stimulation, whole body vibration, and in each case those types of interventions are applied along with therapy and practice and training to help activate the nervous system in a way that is supportive of function.
Of course, all of this takes funding, and that is an important part of what you do here, I'm sure. And we have Sarah Batts. She's Executive Director for the Shepherd Center Foundation. Sarah, I want to talk about the foundation and what you do and what you need.
We come together with about 6,000 donors each and every year to raise money for unfunded or underfunded programs. And these programs are things like the research that is going on that is so life-saving and life-affirming for our patients and families. To our housing, 51% of our patients come from out of state, and many more still come from outside of the metro Atlanta area. You can imagine how devastating the disease can be or an injury and how fragile you are and how important it is to have family nearby. We are able to provide 30 days of free housing to those families, which is such a resource. So friends and family can come and stay in the apartments that we have adjacent to our facility, and that's made possible solely through donations. Each and every year, about $2 million worth. One of the great programs we have is recreation therapy, where we're out taking patients and families to discover fly fishing again. They may discover bird watching. It may be gardening. Getting them back to their hobbies that they previously held or discovering new ones, and how much that ensures the person reclaims a sense of dignity and independence and hope. And our donors make that possible. And the main thing we need is people to go to crowdrise.org and invest in Rand's walk at the AT. But it's really going to that CrowdRise case and saying, we're going to join Cathy as she takes one step and puts one foot in front of the other for our patients and families. There are so many wonderful ways to get involved at Shepherd. We have volunteer opportunities from people that come in the morning to help staff and caregivers and literally feed the patients for us. That takes tremendous time and energy for a clinical staff and for caregivers. So to be able to give them a little bit of respite is a gift of grace. So it is time and talent and funds that we need. It's all three coming together. And each year, 6,000 or so people are coming together to provide more than $12 million in funding for Shepherd Center. That's the baseline of what we need year to year. That's the gap, $12 million. And then you add on to it, what are the capital needs? What are the expansion needs, renovation needs? This year we had a need of more than $17 million. And thankfully, the donor community all across Georgia has said, absolutely, it's so important to have Shepherd Center in our backyard. It's so important that we do not have to go so far away to receive this life-saving care.
How excited are you? You mentioned Cathy. How excited are you about this?
Well, first of all, I wish I could be able to carry that backpack.
I do too.
I think it is tremendous on two fronts. From the funding side, that is a gift that we will treasure. Dr. Field-Fote will be able to really invest it in what they're doing in her lab.
Yeah.
It's also an inspiration for our patients and families, and that's one of the greatest gifts, is to say to families, look at this. 40 years later, post-injury, your wife, who has invested her life and soul into physical therapy, is out doing this project, and her husband is there to greet her when she comes off the trail.
Yeah, it's a great story. Cathy, are we going to be able to track your progress as you go?
Oh, yes. And by the way, this pack weighs 32.5 pounds. So
It looks bigger than that. It really does.
Matilda is her name. Anyway, yes, I'll have a GPS tracker on me so that family and friends can see where I am at all times. I will blog on the crowdrise.org site. I will also blog on my Facebook page, Cathy, CATHYL, McLendon, MCLENDON. And I'll upload these blogs when I get into town and I have reception.
Okay.
Because when there's such a thick cloud cover, you have to, first of all, save your battery. Your battery is very precious out there in the wild, and then you don't get good reception.
So you're not going to be walking along the trail, posting things on using your phone.
No, that will be in the tent at night, right before I fall asleep.
You have enough to do out there, just keeping that pack up.
One of the most interesting things is that I'm going to have to throw a bear bag. You have to throw a rope with a rock attached to it about 10 to 12 feet high on a tree limb and hang your food so that the bears cannot get to your food. And you certainly don't want them inviting themselves into your tent if your food happens to be there, or if there is a delicious smell like toothpaste in your tent.
My goodness.
You have to be real careful with the smells and the food.
You have a plan for everything. Yeah.
You really do.
Do you keep going over and over in your mind in the last few days? Well, I know I've forgotten something.
Oh, yes. I've been packing that bag back and forth for a year and a half, and I realized I've got to have fingernail clippers, of course, so
6 months, that's a while to be out there.
Yes, and the rain gear, that's another thing. You have to make sure you have very, very good rain gear.
What are you going to do when you finish? Are you going to go on vacation, or what are you going to do?
Well, John, you're not going to believe this. I'm going back to college.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, and I'm going to get a degree in fine arts. And I do work with the American Physical Therapy Association. I do go and accredit programs at different colleges, so I will be doing that all over the United States. And, I think I might just take a nap or two.
You're not really retiring. So you're
no,
just
I don't call it retirement, John. I call it revivement.
Yeah. That's great. It's great. Yes. It's a great story, and I want you to come back and tell us how it goes.
I'll be delighted.
Again, tell people how to contribute, how we can help you surpass this $25,000 goal.
Yes, go to crowdrise.org. Type in RANDS, R-A-N-D-S, walk on the A-T. Put the spaces in between, and it will come up and donate right there.
Yeah. Sarah, what about the Shepherd Center and other ways that people can help you out? Where should they go to do that?
In order to make a difference at Shepherd, beyond the crowdrise.org page, simply going to shepherd.org.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see ways to volunteer and ways to contribute.
Dr. Fote, if someone is in need of your services, how should they get in touch with you to get the help they need?
Well, in fact, we look for services for people who have spinal cord injury who are willing to give it their time to volunteer as research subject in our studies. We're so grateful for people who volunteer, and we have a wonderful research page that they can just Google Shepherd Center Spinal Cord Injury Research and be taken to the intake page where they can find out about all the studies that we have going on and identify one that they might be interested in.
Ladies, thank you so much. Cathy, good luck to you. I look forward to keeping up with your progress, and Godspeed in that.
Thank you, John.
Today we've been at the Shepherd Center, and the Shepherd Center is a private nonprofit hospital specializing in medical treatment, research, and rehabilitation for people with spinal cord injury, brain injury, and other neuromuscular conditions. And our guests today have been Dr. Edelle Field-Fote. She is Director of Spinal Cord Injury Research here at Shepherd. Sarah Batts, who's Executive Director of the Shepherd Center Foundation. And Cathy McLendon, who is a physical therapist who is about to retire in just a few days, but not really. She is going to undertake a hike on the Appalachian Trail for 6 months to raise funds for spinal cord injury research. Find out more about the Shepherd Center at shepherd.org. Shepherd is spelled Sheppherd. Go on there and help them out and also help Cathy out on her journey. And we thank them for being our guests, and I thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next week here on Georgia Focus.
You've been listening to Georgia Focus, a public affairs presentation of this station and the Georgia News Network. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of the staff, management, or ownership of this station or the Georgia News Network. If you have comments or questions about Georgia Focus, contact John Clark at the Georgia News Network at 1-800-776-4638 or email johnclark@georgianewsnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.